The night was quiet on Clearwater Lake. Quiet enough that I could hear the soft hum of crickets and the distant clink of someone closing a dock gate. I had just finished cleaning the deck of my old fishing boat, Liberty, when I noticed headlights rolling slowly past my driveway. The SUV didn't stop, didn't speed up, just crawled, watching. I felt the hairs on my arms rise. Ever since I refused to pay the HOA's absurd lake usage fee, they had been circling like vultures around midnight. I stepped onto my porch with a cup of coffee, my nightly ritual. That's when I smelled it. A sharp chemical scent in the air. Before I could react, an orange flash burst across the shoreline. My boat, my late father's boat, erupted into flames so bright they lit the water like molten glass. I dropped the mug instantly, my heart pounding as I ran toward the inferno screaming, "No! No! No!" The fire spread fast, too fast to be accidental. Gasoline, accelerant, planned attack. My neighbors came outside screaming for help. Someone called 911, and I watched firefighters battle a blaze that was meant for one purpose: intimidation. The HOA had crossed a line I never thought possible. They wanted to break me. Instead, they woke something inside me I didn't know I had. When the sheriff arrived, he took one look at the burn pattern and said quietly, "This wasn't kids messing around. Someone wanted to send you a message." He knew what I already suspected. The HOA's board, led by Karen Whitmore, a woman who could weaponize a clause faster than a lawyer in a courtroom. Karen showed up the next morning, wearing oversized sunglasses and fake sympathy. "So tragic," she said, barely hiding a smirk. "If you had paid your compliance fees, we could have avoided tensions." I stared at her like she was poison. "Are you threatening me?" I asked. Her smile tightened. "Just giving you advice." That was her mistake. She assumed I was alone. She assumed I was powerless. She didn't know that my sister, Emily, was a forensic accountant for federal fraud investigations. And she really didn't know that I kept every HOA letter, every fine, every illegal change in their bylaws stored in a tidy folder labeled, in case they pushed too far. Emily arrived that same afternoon, eyes blazing after seeing the charred remains of our father's beloved boat. "They touched Dad's legacy?" she whispered. "Then we're burning them down, legally." She pulled out her laptop right on my kitchen counter and dove into the HOA's financial statements, which were shockingly sloppy. BY Sunset. She had uncovered everything. Misallocated funds, fabricated expenses, missing dues, a personal vacation charged as community infrastructure, and tens of thousands siphoned into an unregistered account under Karen's maiden name. "This is criminal," Emily said. "Not civil. Criminal." We contacted a federal investigator Emily trusted. He took one look at the files and said, "This is more than enough to freeze everything. The moment we file, their accounts go into lockdown." The next morning, at 7:12 a.m. exactly, the motion was filed. And in minutes, the HOA's financial heartbeat flatlined. The fallout was immediate. Board members' credit cards declined at gas stations. Automatic payments bounced. Payroll froze. Contractors refused service. A meeting was called in panic. One I wasn't invited to, but one I showed up to anyway. I walked into that clubhouse with my shoulders straight and my boots still stained with soot from the boat fire. Karen paled the moment she saw the federal officer standing beside me. "You?" she hissed. "You did this." I crossed my arms. "You torched my property." The officer cut in. "Mrs. Whitmore, you are under investigation for financial fraud, embezzlement, and misuse of community funds." Her expression snapped from angry to terrified. I didn't do anything. It was a misunderstanding." But officers walked in behind her, collecting documents, hard drives, and the HOA's precious filing cabinets like they were raiding a cartel. Neighbors crowded outside watching the chaos unfold. Many had suffered for years under the HOA's tyranny. Unfair fines, threats, harassment. When they saw Karen escorted out in handcuffs, a wave of relief rippled across the street like a fresh breeze. Days later, a special meeting dissolved the HOA entirely. The judge declared it non-functional, corrupt, and illegally structured. All debts and fines collected under the fraudulent board were wiped clean. The neighborhood finally breathed again to ask for my boat. The insurance company ruled it an arson linked to criminal intimidation. They paid out full value with urgency, and I used the money to rebuild Liberty exactly as my father kept her. Blue trim, polished deck, the same brass compass he loved. The first evening I took the rebuilt boat onto the lake. The sun dipped low, painting the water gold. Emily stood beside me, arms crossed, smiling. "Dad would be proud," she said softly. I nodded. "And the HOA? Gone," she said, "buried under their own greed." As we sailed across the peaceful water, I realized something important. Intimidation only works on people who stay silent. I didn't. They tried to scare me with fire, so I froze everything they owned. And in the end, they lost far more than a boat. They lost their power, their control, their entire empire of fear. And I got justice, not by fighting fire with fire, but by letting the truth burn hotter than any match they ever struck. Clearwater Lake always felt like a place where time slowed down. Early mornings soft as silk, evenings warm enough for porch talk, and nights quiet enough that even the wind sounded polite. But peace is fragile, especially when an HOA controls everything from mailbox paint to the angle of your deck chairs. I was wiping down my father's old fishing boat, Liberty, humming the tune he used to whistle, when a black SUV rolled slowly in front of my dock. The window didn't roll down. The engine didn't rev. It just lingered, watching me like a camera with wheels. Ever since I refused to pay the HOA's new water access compliance fee, the board had been circling like hawks. Fines, letters, threats, you name it. None of it worked. I wasn't backing down. Around midnight, I stepped out with a fresh mug of coffee. That was when it happened. The air smelled wrong. Not wood, not smoke, chemicals. Sharp, bitter, dangerous. Before I could take another breath, a blinding flash erupted across the lake. My boat, my father's legacy, burst into an inferno of orange flames. I yelled so loudly my throat tore. The fire blazed upward like a creature hungry for destruction. The heat was so intense it pushed me backward. My hands shook. Firefighters arrived fast, sirens echoing across the water. But even they knew the truth the moment they saw the burn pattern. "Accelerant," one said. This was intentional. My gut twisted. The HOA wanted to break me. They were done with letters and threats. They wanted to hurt me where it mattered. The sheriff walked slowly around the remains of my boat, flashlight scanning the ground. "This wasn't teenagers," he said. "Someone wanted to send a message." Later that morning, while the smell of burnt wood still hung in the air, Karen Whitmore, the HOA president, walked down my driveway like she was visiting a crime scene she didn't cause. "So terrible," she said, voice dripping with poison. "If you had just followed the rules, maybe incidents like this could be avoided." I stepped forward. "Are you threatening me?" Her sunglasses hid her eyes, but not the smirk curling on her lips. "I'm offering guidance," she said. She walked away with the same confidence of someone who thought she could never be touched. That's when I made a single promise. "I'm taking you down." I called my sister, Emily, a forensic accountant with a talent for exposing corporate fraud. I told her everything, including Karen's veiled threat. Emily arrived before noon, eyes furious as she stared at the charred remains of Liberty. "They touched Dad's boat?" she whispered. "Okay." They declared war. She opened her laptop right there at my kitchen table. "Show me every letter, every fine, every bylaw change." Luckily, I kept everything. Organized, dated, categorized. Emily flipped through documents, occasionally muttering, "Illegal, illegal, wildly illegal." Then she paused. "Do you know how sloppy these people are?" By sunset, she had uncovered an entire maze of financial crimes. Missing dues, false maintenance charges, undisclosed accounts, and blatant embezzlement. But the worst? Over $68,000 funneled into an account labeled under Karen's maiden name, What 7:12 a.m. the next morning, the motion was filed. Within minutes, the HOA's financial artery collapsed. Every account frozen. He called a federal investigator Emily trusted. He was stunned. This is textbook HOA fraud. I can freeze their accounts immediately. That's prison time, Emily said calmly. Karen tried to pay for her morning latte. Declined. Tried to fill gas. Declined. Tried to auto-pay her property. Mandatory emergency meeting was called at the clubhouse. They didn't invite me, but I showed up anyway. Declined. Board members start the moment I walked in. The room exploded with whispers. I could smell their fear like sweat on a hot day. Karen's jaw tightened so hard I thought her teeth might break. Calling each other in panic. My card got declined. Our landscaper quit. Why is payroll frozen? Right behind me, the federal officer entered. The entire board froze like statues. Karen pointed at me. He did this. He's attacking the HOA. The officer stepped forward. Ma'am, you're under federal investigation for embezzlement, fraud, and financial misconduct. Her face collapsed. Wait, this must be a mistake. Neighbors gathered outside, whispering and peeking through windows. For years, the HOA had bullied half of them. Now they were witnessing karma served cold. But two other officers walked in and began seizing files, computers, and financial ledgers. The board argued among themselves, pointing fingers, shouting, blaming each other. The officer looked exhausted. One at a time, please. You'll each get your turn. Karen tried to escape through a side door. An officer blocked her, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. You're not going anywhere. Her voice cracked. I didn't burn anything. That wasn't me. The officer replied, the arson is handled by county investigators. We are here for the money you stole. She broke into tears. Fake ones, in my opinion. Please, you don't understand. But no one in that clubhouse had sympathy left for her. Later that afternoon, residents voted unanimously to dissolve the HOA. The judge approved it within 48 hours, calling the organization structurally corrupt and financially predatory. Every fine, every debt, every illegal charge was erased. People cried in relief. Some hugged me. Others shook Emily's hand like she was a superhero. The sheriff returned to give me an update about the fire. We found traces of gasoline near the dock and boot prints matching a board member's size. I nodded slowly. I figured. The investigation into the arson spun separately from the financial one. But it didn't take long. Evidence pointed directly to a certain board member's truck being near my dock that night. He ended up confessing, blaming pressure from the HOA leadership. Coward. Insurance ruled the fire as criminal arson linked to HOA intimidation. They paid in full. I used the money to rebuild Liberty from the hull up, restoring her exactly as my father left her. Watching the carpenters realign the planks and reinstall the brass compass felt like healing in slow motion. Neighbors stopped by often, checking in, offering help, bringing food. It seemed the whole community was recovering together. One elderly neighbor said, "Your father would have been proud, son." I tried not to tear up. Emily stayed in town longer than expected, helping residents reorganize without an HOA. "You're free now," she told them. "Don't misuse it." People volunteered to maintain common areas. Kids played without fear of being fined for chalk drawings. And Karen? She was indicted on 5 charges. Her face on the news looked nothing like the confident tyrant who once smirked in my driveway. The arsonist board member pleaded guilty too. Reduced sentence for cooperating. Still deserved more. 1 quiet evening. Months after it all ended, I stood on my rebuilt dock beside Emily, the sun melting into the lake like honey. "You did good," she said. "We did good," I corrected. I climbed onto Liberty. The deck still smooth from fresh varnish and turned on the engine. It hummed perfectly. Stronger than ever as we drifted from the dock. The golden ripples reflected on the hull, painting the water with memories of my father. Emily leaned on the railing, smiling. Dad always said justice comes slow but hits hard. I laughed. Guess he was right. We sailed across the lake in silence, letting the wind carry away the last remnants of fear the HOA once held over us. For the first time in months, I felt free. Not just legally, not just financially, mentally free. I realized that intimidation only works when you bow to it. I didn't. They burned my boat to scare me. Instead, I froze their money, exposed their crimes, and watched their empire collapse. They expected me to fold. They lost everything. Their power, their greed, their throne of paperwork and fear. And me? I gained back more than a boat as liberty cut across the calm water under a fading sunset. One truth settled deep in my chest. I reclaimed my peace, my lake, my freedom. Clearwater Lake wasn't just a body of water. It was a living memory. The kind of place where mornings smelled like pine needles and worn leather, and evenings looked like a postcard you wanted to live inside forever. It was also the last place my father ever fished before he passed away, which made the boat he left me, Liberty, feel less like a possession and more like a family heirloom stitched with memories. So when the HOA started their nonsense fees, threats, and visits, I ignored them. I wasn't letting anyone tell me how to use my father's dock or his boat. One evening, after sanding Liberty's deck smooth, I leaned against the railing and watched the sunset melt like lava across the lake. Peaceful. Almost too peaceful. That's when I saw it. A black SUV crawling past my driveway, slow enough to be suspicious, deliberate enough to be hostile. The window didn't roll down. The engine barely hummed. But I felt watched, targeted, marked. That I already knew who it was. Karen Whitmore, the HOA president, or one of her board members acting like a henchman. The HOA had been pressuring me for weeks. New fees, new bylaws, new threats. They wanted me to comply, to obey, to kneel. But that night, as darkness washed over the lake and crickets took control of the soundscape, I brushed it off. I had no idea how wrong I was. Around midnight, I stepped outside with a steaming mug of coffee. The air felt off, thick, chemical, sharp. My instincts screamed, but I couldn't place why. Then it happened. A sudden whump of ignition. Then a roar. My boat exploded into flames. Towering, violent flames that painted the lake orange and turned still water into molten fire. The heat slapped me backward. I shouted until my voice cracked, sprinting toward the inferno as shadows danced across the dock. Neighbors ran out, phones in hand, screaming. The fire grew monstrous, spreading like it was hungry, reaching up into the night sky. Firefighters arrived in minutes, but minutes felt like centuries as Liberty burned, my father's legacy turning into a funeral pyre. Accelerant, a firefighter muttered as he crouched near the charred wood. This wasn't an accident. The sheriff agreed. The burn pattern told a story of planning, intention, malice, and I already knew who had written that story. The next morning, Karen showed up, sunglasses on, fake sympathy dripping from her smile like oil on water. "This is tragic," she said, her tone too casual. "Maybe these tensions wouldn't happen if you simply followed the HOA guidelines." I stepped toward her. "Are you threatening me?" She smirked. "I'm giving advice." Then she turned and walked away, heels clicking like gunshots. That single smirk told me everything. They tried to intimidate me. They tried to break me. They forgot who I was. I called my sister, Emily, a forensic accountant known for burying corporate criminals with spreadsheets alone. She drove in from Raleigh that same day, stepping out of her car with a fury I'd only seen once. At our father's funeral, when she saw the smoldering skeleton of Liberty, she stopped breathing. "They burned Dad's boat?" I nodded. Her jaw clenched. "Then we burned them." She set up her laptop on my kitchen table like she was preparing for war. "Bring me everything they've sent you." Lucky for us, I kept every letter, warning, fine, and threat organized in folders. Dad always said, "Document everything. One day it'll matter." Emily scanned each paper, scrolling through digital records, muttering like a surgeon studying x-rays. Illegal. Unlawful. Fraudulent. Idiotic. By evening, she cracked the case wide open. Missing funds. Fake maintenance charges. Unregistered accounts. Money laundering through fabricated vendors. Then she found the bombshell, $68, for 32 siphoned into an account under Karen's maiden name. Emily leaned back. Congratulations. Your HOA is run by criminals. We contacted a federal investigator Emily trusted. He reviewed the files. His eyebrows shot up. The next morning, at exactly 7:12 a.m., he filed the emergency motion. This is textbook fraud. I can freeze their accounts immediately. And with a few digital keystrokes, the HOA's entire financial system froze. Silent, cold, dead. Board members' cards declined. Auto payments bounced. Vendors quit. Chaos spread faster than gossip at a family reunion. Contractors refused to show up that an emergency meeting was called. One they definitely didn't invite me to. But I walked in anyway, boots still dusty with ash from the night Liberty died. Every board member froze when they saw me. Karen's face drained of color. Behind me, the federal officer entered. Badge out, voice stern. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, you are under investigation for embezzlement, fraud, and financial misconduct. Karen's panic shattered her mask. What? No, this is harassment. Two officers began seizing files, computers, ledgers. Everything the HOA ever used to control the neighborhood. Residents gathered outside, whispering, recording, cheering. For years, the HOA had bullied them too. Fines for grass length, mailbox colors, window curtains. Karen tried to run. An officer caught her by the arm. You're not going anywhere, she cried. Ugly, dramatic, irritating tears. It wasn't me. I didn't burn anything. The officer nodded. That's a separate investigation. We're here for the money. Fear had been their currency. Now their empire was collapsing. The board members turned on each other instantly, arguing, accusing, shouting like children caught stealing candy. The officer sighed. You'll each get your turn. Calm down. 2 days later, residents voted unanimously to dissolve the HOA. The judge approved it in record time.